Newer fans might not be as aware of this, but there's always been this really interesting, fascinating subject within the TOG community about Urek Mazino, the fan favorite character. Everybody loves Urek. Ever since his first appearance, it's just been hype, right? Every time Urek shows up, you know he's gonna do something cool. But there's something about him that has always sort of caused the community to debate or discuss or argue. It has to do with his first appearance in the story, actually, when Bomb scratched Urek inside the Zigana. So join me as we delve deeper into the topic of Bomb versus Urek. Before we continue, however, this video is sponsored by Tower of God Great Journey. This is the very first Tower of God centered video game to be released globally, and it's been super fun. I've been playing it like non-stop. Tons of really cool looking and fun characters from Tower of God between Epic and Legendary, some of which you get for free, including Bomb and Viol, who are your interchangeable main characters, which you get for free by going through Revolution Road. The story is also here with tests like the Crown Game and Hide and Seek making a return in an interactive way, which is really fun, especially for someone who wants to relive the story. The gear system is great because you can strengthen your team by sharing the gear, which makes leveling it up very helpful. It's an AFK style, idle, level up mobile game. Even if you're offline, the rice pot will train for you, so even if you have to turn it off for now, you can always come back to it later in the day. There are some really cool celebration rewards like a free Endorsee, a ton of gold, and 10 summon tickets, which means you get like a guaranteed extra epic character. So go check out Tower of God Great Journey, link is in the description, and let's get back to the video. A brief refresher of the fight itself, just to kind of set up the scenario and the time frame within the story. This is near the beginning of Season 2, after Sweet and Sour has been formed, and Urek is inside the Zigana retrieving the baby Zigana because the Yon family is like driving them to extinction to keep the gemstones precious. It's been a long time since I've reread that section, but Bomb and Urek clash. Urek is there, he kind of wants to play around with Bomb a little bit, and he obviously like one-hit KOs Bomb. It's not as cool as in the animations and all that. He basically just uses one attack and Bomb ends up protecting his friends instead, and Urek kind of appreciates that and he thinks that's pretty cool. But when Urek leaves and talks to UJ points out that Urek actually has a scar or a scratch. Scar makes it sound a little worse. A scratch on his cheek from the fight. And then Urek's like, whoa, something must be going on with this kid. And it's a really hype moment, right? Because it obviously teases Bomb's potential. It teases the greatness that we're going to be seeing from Bomb as the story goes on. And we've always known Bomb is an irregular, so he's special, etc. Like, it's a really cool moment. However, ever since I started reading Tower of God in 2017 and being a part of the community, seeing Reddit posts and Discord conversations and such, I've always seen this sentiment from the fan base that this is a plot hole. That SIU essentially wrote himself into a hole by doing this, because Urek Mazino is the strongest active regular in the tower, and Bomb as a D-rank regular was able to, or he was even an E-rank by then, was able to harm him, injure him in some way, and that essentially the power scaling is no longer consistent because he was able to do that at such an early level. Being a plot hole is sort of the main thing that I see, and it ultimately leads to like, hey, SIU made a mistake. Now I know exactly what you're thinking, Yes, you, I know what you're thinking, that SIU himself admitted in a blog post that this was a mistake, that he shouldn't have had that scene with Bomb and Urek because ultimately it didn't make sense in his story. This was what I always heard. This was the comment on this was like the nail in the coffin when people were arguing. Well, SIU said that this happened and therefore it does skew the story and therefore we should just kind of chalk it up to a miraculous moment that doesn't make sense, whatever, just forget about it. What's interesting is I believed this for years. I just assumed this was the case. It's fake. It is fake. SIU never said that. This blew my mind. I was doing prep for this video like earlier today, and I was like, oh yeah, SIU said this thing. It's fake. I think what ended up happening was there was a mistranslation and people just assumed that's what SIU meant, but regardless, he never said that, and I feel like that's important to state. Having Bomb hurt Urek was not a mistake. In fact, we've seen Bomb do this exact same thing earlier in a situation where he shouldn't have. We see Lei Roro commenting that Bomb using Shinsu to cut out Hwaryun's eye was like a miraculous, almost unexplainable moment. And he mentions that there's something peculiar going on with this kid, right? And it obviously doesn't compare to Viol harming Urek, but Viol harming Urek, I think is almost, it's still more impressive, but Viol at that time was someone who had been training under Fug and learned the floral butterfly technique, and I feel like, in a way, having just regular Season 1 Bomb do that to Hua Ryun it was just as impressive in some ways. This was just taking it to the next level. Another layer to add on to this is talking about Urek Mazino himself, because a lot of people say that Urek in that moment was shown off as too weak. Urek's true power wouldn't have let that happen. Well, I want to bring up the Floor of Death, where we get to see a little more about how Urek handles all this overwhelming power that he has. We learn that Urek can actually just control how much strength he's able to output. When he fights Karaka, he's using 1%. He's just using his pinky finger. That's why everyone jokes that it's not Karaka versus Urek, it's Karaka versus Urek's finger. When Urek wears that ankle bracelet that UJ gives him, that isn't shrinking his power. That isn't making him somehow weaker whatsoever. The bracelet just hides his power. So even if Urek is like restraining himself, he still gives off this like overwhelming aura just because he's friggin' Urek Mazino. So the bracelet hides the aura, and then Urek himself is able to control how much strength he outputs. That alone explains that when he's fighting Viol, he's obviously able to be as strong as he wants in a sense. Not that he's able to be like Shibisu level, because then we add on to that rankers throughout the story, we've seen this with people like Endorsi even who have Jihad's blood, they're able to use Shinsu to heighten their bodies, but when they're not using Shinsu, their bodies are still tough. We see that with Quant falling off the bridge in Hide and Seek. Like, he's not using Shinsu and he still survives the fall. Like, he's still a ranker, but at the same time, it's Shinsu that's able to bring rankers to that beyond level of insane strength. We see that because when Endorsi fights Quant, Quant is trying, right? Quant is a ranker in that moment who is not wanting to lose, and he still ends up like physically winning that fight in my opinion, but it's close. Like, Endorsi puts on a huge fight because she has Jihad's blood, her body is automatically like on another level in a way. The fact that Quant is a ranker is because he's learned how to use Shinsu and melt into shadow and strengthen his body with reinforcement. When Bomb and Endorsi are on the bridge in the Name Hunt station, Endorsi outpaces Bomb when they're not using Shinsu. We even see this to an extent with Bomb and Lilial. I know that's also controversial, but Bomb isn't using Shinsu and Lilial is packing a punch physically. Now, that's not to say Bomb is weak physically, absolutely not, he is a beast, but it's more to prove that these other characters' bodies are tough, right? So with Urek, when he's not using Shinsu, he's lowering his guard, and you have an irregular who like is protecting his friends, and in that moment lands a tiny scratch. It really isn't that hard for me to believe. It's not like that insane to me. It's not world breaking, right? It doesn't like break the power scaling in my opinion. At the end of the day, Bomb versus Urek is just playing with a baby kitten, right? Ultimately, that kitten maybe scratches you a little bit and you're like, oh my god, you're like 2 weeks old, how'd you do that? But that's it. That's all it is. Urek is not trying to harm the baby kitten. He's playing around with it. And the baby kitten managed to harm him. Boom! My analogies are on point! It's not a plot hole, it's not some kind of mistake that SIU made, it's just a really fun way to hint at Bomb's potential, especially when Urek is at 0%, negative 1, 2, 3,000% in that moment, and it's just a hype way to show off Bomb's power. That's it. That's all. End of discussion, in my opinion. Okay, end of discussion in my opinion. What do you think? Am I missing something about this? Is it really a plot hole? Did SIU actually say that? Because in my research, I found no proof about it whatsoever. Comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic because I think it's a really fun one. And like I said, it's always been a topic of discussion within the community. Subscribe for more Tower of God content coming soon. And once again, thank you to Tower of God Great Journey for sponsoring this video. And I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.